translate into English not simultaneously, so you don't need a headset. You don't need a earphone because I would translate consecutively. 耳机不需要交给听英文的，因为师傅只讲2、3分钟，他讲完了我再翻译成英文，所以耳机不需要动。
大会的主持人，这个慧光法师各位各部这个前来到我们台湾来参加这一次的这个时尚是妇女国际的这个佛教的妇女会的这个大会那么我站在这个中国佛教会的立场，当然也表达万分的欢迎。那么今天因为听到我们这个中华佛事协会的林秘书长告诉我有这回事，所以他就帮我联系，那么我就一方面嘛，就特别赶来向各位这个致意祝福请祝福大家这个法喜充满
Ladies and gentlemen, Venerable Dharma Masters, distinguished guests, I very welcome every one of you come over to Taiwan. I represent Chinese Buddhism Association to welcome each and every one of you. I was just told by my General Secretary a couple of days ago of this conference, so I insist come over here to welcome everyone.
可能你我不知道，所以我就没有前来。在今天看到非常高兴。在我们台湾是非常的开放，尤其是各宗教的就非常的自由，而且这尤其是在法治上面的，只要是说这个，尤其是对这个国际之间的运道而来的这个朋友，站在台湾的立场是特别的欢迎。当然了，因为这个是，尤其是我们佛教的这个这种信仰跟奉行跟素质的人，当然跟社会一般的人又有不一样。可以讲，不但我们在台湾，而且也可以跟这个国际之间应该是都是在互讨的这个教理之下来宣示，那么来推动我们人讲的佛教的净土，而能够祝福我们人这个社会的一种安宁，那么人类这个人民的生活的幸福，这是我们大家的共同的一个目标。
We in Taiwan at this conference, especially in Buddhism, as we know, the people who has the faith of Buddhism naturally is a little bit different from the ordinary people. And in Taiwan, as well as in the international society, together, collectively, we should promote and also try to push the right way. We have the common goal to reach the peace for the society and for the human being.
所有今天怎么样的蓬勃的发展，它的功劳就是谁？就是我们的比丘尼跟这许多的善女人的护持打下的基础。
As we all know, Taiwan's Buddhism has very well developed, and why so? It is due to the fully support and effort.
因此，在我们站在佛教界的立场，对于比丘尼、对于善女人的这护法是特别强，没有任何的阶级的限制。这个呢，我希望在各界的各位的善女人这个 这个必修呢都应该能够了解我们台湾目前的这个佛教的境况。
And in Taiwan, we are very much emphasized and pay attention to tuning as well as Sakyadita. And in here, they all have the freedom to interact, to exchange their opinions, and there's no limitation to them. And this is the situation in Taiwan.
在我们台湾的这个必修里的出家众比必修出家众多，而且台湾的护法的善女人的护法要比男的护法来的多，而且这个必修里的出家的法师的贡献不亚于比丘的法师，而且比丘尼的法师比较多，所以他们的贡献力量也特别的宏大。而善女人的护法的，他们的力量的影响更是大。所以台湾的佛教呢，所以讲兴旺呢，就是跟比丘尼跟善女人的护法，其实不能够这个分离的，是连在一起的力量。
In Taiwan, as we all know, the number of bhikkhuni is far greater. Due to the support of the bhikkhuni and the support of the Sakyadita and those female Dharma supporters, and together collectively with their effort, and that's why the Buddhism in Taiwan is so prospering. And this connection.
佛教有分大乘佛教、熟成佛教。所谓熟成佛教的南传佛教，我们就是原始佛教。大乘佛教是信的社会利益这个社会大众的佛教。那么在这个大乘佛教，当然以我们中国的佛教为代表。目前中国的佛教是以我们台湾的佛教为代表。所以说，你们各自之间的这个比丘尼还是善女人这个护法们呢，你们要想知道我们中国的大乘佛教，你们应该要在台湾去了解、去观察，深入的你们才能获得大乘佛教对社会弘法利生的它的重要的任务跟它的意义。
As we all know, we have Mahayana. Understand the effort and contribution of Mahayana Buddhism, and it's better to come over to either Taiwan or China to have a deep understanding of the contribution of the Mahayana Buddhism.
佛教从我们中国来之后，而且从日本、从韩国去那么说一句话，今天因为进入到21世纪了那么这个时代不一样，人是多元化，所以我们的佛教也跟到时代的前进，也是多元化。而我们现在台湾的比丘尼也有博士、有教授副教授、有讲师，也到这个各大学去任教那么可以讲把我们佛法的真理已经真正传入到现代的这个知识的这个大学的这里面的申请人里面，让他们反出到这个我们佛教的大乘的精神。
Buddhism came over to China and then went to Japan and Korea. We now have entered the 21st century. It's a very diversified and multi-faith century. Therefore, Buddhism is also progressing into a very diversified and multi-faith culture. And in Taiwan, a lot of bhikkhunis, they not only professors, also scholars and academic personnel, and a lot of them they also teach in the university, and they also teach the essence of the Buddha Dharma, and they also try to teach the young generation about the Buddha Dharma. So the Buddha Dharma already entered into the university, and it's very well.
所以我在这里，我见到你们非常高兴，所以就多说几句话， 也希望你们对我们台湾佛教能够真正了解，能真正了解我们台湾比丘尼的他们弘法利生的这个成绩功效并不是当然比丘尼人多而自由，他们的奉献是提供就在佛教的不可埋没。所以我将要多说几句话，让你们了解。尤其从现在的我们在台湾比丘尼就是法范这个大学的这个创办人守缘法师，我相信你们就应该可以了解，以守缘法师的精神就可以代表我们台湾的比丘尼对我们的佛教的贡献。
Since I'm very, very happy, therefore I tend to say a little bit more words than I intended to. The purpose is for the distinguished guests from other countries in come over to Taiwan to understand more about the contribution of Vietnamese in Taiwan today here, and I'm very, very happy about that.
会长，对不起，各国的这个比丘尼法师上任这个来到台湾，希望你们能够过得非常愉快。今天耽误了大家宝贵的这个时间，我在这里轻易在这里祝贺大家法喜充满，谢谢你们，阿弥陀佛。
Very sorry you're taking so much time, and welcome you, and hope you have a very happy stay in Taiwan, and wish the success of this conference.
大会有什么的这个需要我们中国佛教会来协助你们的话请你们不要客气。这次确实我是不太知道，所以对大家来台湾没有接待大家了，这个非常的失礼我也不晓得你们的时间如何安排，我也不敢这个打扰你们。如果可以的话，当然，因为我准备这个16号就要到斯里兰卡去不然的话呢，我一定会请大家这个聚会吃一顿我们台湾的四菜的这个口味在这里，假如你们需要就跟我讲就好了阿弥陀佛
Well, if you need any assistance while you're staying in Taiwan, do not hesitate to come to us, to our association, and we'll be more than happy to provide the assistance. And unfortunately, I will be going to Sri Lanka on the 16th. Otherwise, I would prepare a very good vegetarian banquet to treat everyone.
我们也要特别感谢林居士为我们安排了这次的这个到访，我们要感谢他，谢谢。我们刚送的。
您来就是送给大家最好的礼物，您来就是最好的礼物。
对不起。
He apologized. He doesn't bring any gift to everybody, but I tell him, his present is already a great gift to everybody. 都可以的。可以啊。好，谢谢。And he is giving a donation for $100,000 NT dollars today.
For any of our panelists, so
if you would raise your hand and ask your question. Yes.
I have a suggestion and a question to the Venerable who spoke last. I have a suggestion and a question to the Venerable who spoke last. The suggestion is that we take up the issue raised by this Venerable here about whether the nuns feel themselves superior or feel superior to the monks in a group discussion. Maybe we form a special group discussion and sort it all out once and for all. My question to the Venerable who spoke last, I'm very happy that you spoke about this issue. And being a Sri Lankan, I do not want to speak very much about the Sri Lankan's role in the world, in the spread of Buddhism. And I happened to, Venerable Venerable Dr. Ratanasara, the president of the Buddhist Sangha Council, is my senior colleague, senior to me by about 15 or 20 years at the university. He was my colleague until I left to work in the UN in New York. And I'm very pleased about the work that you are doing. But the question that is bothering me is that I'm also very pleased about I'm very happy about the interfaith dialogue, interreligious councils that are going all over the world to have a kind of to get over our prejudices and to spread a common message that we could work together as human beings and sisters and brothers in the world for peace and humanity. But the problem right now, some of us are facing, for example, in Cambodia and in Sri Lanka, is the conversion, unethical conversion that is going on of other religions. You mentioned Mormons, otherwise I would not have asked this question. Mormons are one of the worst, I'm sorry to say, converters into Christianity. You said that they joined, you allowed them to join the interreligious council. And right now we have been inundated with all these Christian evangelist, fundamentalist organizations. We do not object any conversions out of conviction. Anybody has the right, the freedom in all our countries to convert into any religion that we like to. But these are all unethical conversions that are going on in our countries. In Cambodia, for example, the poor Cambodians get converted for $50. They become Christian just for $50 for some meals or food or employment or some job or some. And in Sri Lanka too, they register in Sri Lanka, and we have been studying the cases. They register as Christian organizations, fundamental Christian organizations, and they go into remote villages and buy the souls for money, for food, and for jobs. So we are facing this challenge. This is a huge problem in our countries. Thank you.
I had no idea that the Mormons were so active in Sri Lanka.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, in Cambodia.
Okay, the only thing I could say is, in Japan, the Mormons have been there for 50 years. They've only converted, I don't believe anybody in Japan. But I believe that there are two responses to this. First of all, it makes me very sad to see it happening. But also, we Buddhists have to take part of that blame because we should be out doing social work. And the people are going to these for money in order to support their families. That's the only reason why they are converting. Where are the Buddhists who should be out there working against that sort of thing? That is what I would like to put forward to the Buddhists here today, that we have to work in our own countries to keep this sort of proselytization from occurring. And actually, when John Paul was here in LA in 1987 or whenever it was, that was what Dr. Ratanasara spoke to him about. He said, "Holy Father, I want you to know what is happening in our countries because of this proselytization." He said, "I don't think you're aware of it." He said, "But please tell your priests to not do that sort of unethical proselytization." We don't mind if people truly believe it, then let them convert, but we don't like it being done the way you were speaking about right now. I'm sorry I don't have an answer for that, but I do think that we need to work harder in our countries to support the people so they do not turn to these Christian groups and become what we call rice Christians. To become Christians just for the rice and their families. They shouldn't be going hungry. They should not need these things. And if we're doing what we should be doing in our countries, they would not be converting over for those reasons.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to respond or add to this? Or any of our other panelists? Unfortunately, Dr. Sister Wong had to leave suddenly. So, unfortunately, she had to leave suddenly. But our other panelists are still here.
I would like to hear more about the women, the Muslim women in Spain, who are able to get together and talk about their needs and their wants and desires. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, in Spain, we have not only Spanish Muslim women, but women from Morocco, from other countries, Arab countries, even from Iran, from Pakistan. 3 years ago, well, I'm collaborating with an association of Muslim women from many nationalities. And we saw that it was necessary. Women needed to talk about their problems, but they didn't have the possibility to do it, or they were afraid of doing it, because they had always or their husbands or brothers or somewhere just keeping watch on what they were saying or not. So we finally decided to organize this first Congress, and it was a real success. It was so crowded that the hall we have reserved for this Congress wasn't enough for all the people who came. Some women came there with their husbands, but of course the husbands were carried away. Of course, it's not. There is no reason if we're going to talk about women's problems. Well, no, it's not necessary their presence there. Just that. I mean, they are doing congresses where men, Muslim congresses where men are majority and women have to be, yes, behind in the last rows. So it's also logical we can have this possibility too. We are equal. So it was a success because all women had the opportunity to talk about the problems, about they wanted to learn, they wanted to read the Quran, they wanted to know more about Islam, even Arab women. But they didn't have the possibility because the mosque, for example, in Barcelona, we are not allowed to go into the mosque. That's incredible. In a country, in an Arab country, this is possible. No, you can't go. Of course, you can go through the doors for women, but you can go. In Barcelona, it's not possible. So during that Congress, it was like a therapy. I think it was like a therapy because they cried, they said what they wanted to say, they opened their hearts. So it was very beautiful. Even if we were from different countries, even if we were from different cultures, married woman, single, with veil, without veil, completely different characters. Everything was going so fluidly, so peacefully. Everything was okay. Then we decided to continue with this work. We have had more congresses in different cities in Spain because we want to hear and to see other points of view, not only in Barcelona but in Andalusia, in the north of Spain, in Madrid, because each city has a different problem. maybe in Barcelona we have more people from Morocco, but in Madrid, and there are more people from Syria or from Saudi Arabia. In Andalusia, there are people from other countries. So that will give us a better approach of our own community, of our own problems. Then we have some conferences, then we have some meetings. We are trying to help our sisters to learn more about Islam. We lend them, we give them books to read, not books written only for Saudi Arabia government. That's important. But books written by European people too, because we have a lot of European Muslim people, very important people like Guénon, Chouan, Henri Corbin. These are very important intellectual people, and they were Muslims. So I have to recognize that we have a big problem within our community, and is that women not always support women. That's a real problem. A point like the bail, I was talking with my roommate about this problem. It's a big problem. It seems it is not, it's just a matter of wearing the veil or not wearing the veil, but it is important. They cannot understand that there are other ways of expressing Islam, not by wearing simply the veil. The veil is not giving you the guarantee that you will be 100% good Muslim. So that's one problem. Another problem is, of course, the culture. Each country has a different culture. So many times they confuse their culture, the way of how to dress, with Islam. And it is not that the point. Many Spanish women have converted into Islam. And they think that because of being Muslim, they have to wear an Arabic woman. That's not true. And if you want to explain that, they are going to say, no, you're wrong. But why am I wrong? Because my husband said that. But have you read it in the Quran? No, I haven't read the Quran. So, you cannot judge the others if you don't know really your religion. Anyway, we have a hard work ahead, because even Arabic people recognize that they have forgotten a lot of Islam because of many reasons. Of course, it's not only talking about blame or not. It's not only, we have not to blame them for everything. Sometimes people connect terrorism, violence. For example, that photo of the Palestinian boy, supposed Palestinian boy, with religion. Not always is a matter of religion. So I would like you to consider this and take the history and read the history. Please do not confuse this history with spirituality. Well, I don't know if you want to know anything else. Yeah.
I have a question to Dr. Morales. Do you have a female Sufi teacher?
Of course, there are shaykhs. In Sufism, in Tasawwuf, we have shaykh and shaykhs. Shaykh is a man, is a male teacher, and shaykha is the female.
Is it the same status, the same level?
Same level, the same level. And even if they are teachers with a lot of experience, with a lot of barakah. We say barakah is something special they've got with their action, their generosity, something that maybe can, if I teach and touch her, could be also transmitted to her. If they have barakah, even if they have barakah, they are equal to us. They are no superior. we all are equal. An imam, for example, is nobody. It's someone who is leading the preach. That was the word in imam, amana, who is in front of, behind the person who is praying. So sometimes some imams consider it as a profession. It's not a profession. I can't lead the preach. I can't be an imam.
Let's see, do we still have time for? Not one more question?
No, it's time for lunch now.
Time for lunch now? Okay, it's time for lunch, but one more question.
Okay, I have the power.
Stephanie has the power. She has the power. Okay. Yes, please, Venerable. Yes, Venerable.
Really about love. The first speaker, while in Buddhism we recognize metta as love. The vipassana goes beyond that, where the self is not only suppressed but completely eradicated. The mind and body system is a void. So in Buddhism, we have two disciplines. One is metta, and other one is the total eradication of self. In metta, we suppress the self, but in vipassana, we eradicate the self in center. Thank you.
May I give a short answer to this? We know the same process in the Christian tradition, and we express this as we die to ourselves and we die to Jesus. So you have St. Paul who says, no longer I live, but Jesus lives in me. We know that also.
Thank you very much. I hope we can continue these and many other questions in our afternoon discussion groups. Thank you very much for everyone's patience and understanding. Thank you, our speakers.
Would all of the people who have volunteered to be discussion group leaders please meet Allison at the back of the theater for 1 minute before lunch? Everyone who is a discussion group leader, please meet Allison for 1 If there's no announcement, then we're going to start our first.
I just have to introduce you. The facilitator for today is Dr. Mariko Namba-Walter. It's okay.
Okay, all right. So it's back to my turn. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Let me put my paper in order. Venerable Asodam Sinin. She's from Korea, but right now she's at University of Virginia. She says she just decided to write something about Korean Buddhist nun for her PhD dissertation.
and she's excited about her topic. And her topic today, this afternoon, is comparing the first Buddhist woman in early Chinese and ancient Indian Buddhism.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today I would like to. This is a short version of my paper. I have a full page. So if anyone who is interested in my topic after this conference, please come and ask me full page. And I will read my paper. In order to examine the lives of the first Buddhist woman in early Chinese Buddhism and those of the first Buddhist woman in ancient Indian Buddhism, I have conducted a comparative study of nuns in the two Buddhist texts, the Bhikshunism biographies of nuns in Chinese and the Therigatha verses of elder nuns in Pali. To compare women in the two texts, this paper is divided into two parts. In the first part of this paper, the classes of women before joining the Bhikshuni Sangha will be compared. In the second part of this paper, the self-wishes or other situations of women which led to monastic life will be compared. By closely comparing the woman in the Bhikshunism and the Therigatha, the women in the two texts can roughly be grouped according to their classes before they joined the Bhikshuni Sangha as the categories in the table number 1. I believe you got the tables. Please, I handed out tables, and please take out the page number 1. That is the number 1 and number 2. That is table number 1. The table number 1 reveals that between the Bhikshunism, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce Chinese correctly, but I wrote down, and I hope you understand my Chinese pronunciation. And the table number 1 reveals that between the Bhikshunism and the Therigatha, a remarkable difference lies in the classes of women who renounce the world. Classification of the woman in the two texts shows that there was an outstanding number of unmarried women and children who joined the Bhikshuni Sangha in the Bhikshunism. On the contrary, in the Therigatha, women who renounce the worldly life belong to a wide social range of ranks, from royalty to slaves. As the table number 1 shows, the largest number of women in the Bhikshunism who joined the Bhikshuni Sangha were unmarried. 25 out of 65 refused to marry and became nuns. The ages of unmarried women ranges from 13 for the youngest girl to 29 as the oldest woman. In the category of unmarried women in the Bhikshunism, we see that there was a remarkable struggle between parents and their daughters when the daughters refused to marry and wished to become nuns instead. Two biographies of the Bhikshunism state that the two girls threatened their parents with committing suicide as a way of obtaining permission to enter the monastic life. Yet, many women of the category of unmarried women in the Bhikshunism also waited for their parents' permission to enter the monastery until they reached their 20s. Where the unmarried woman waited patiently for their parents' permission or gained permission through their threat of committing suicide in order to enter the monastic life. Some biographies of the Bhikshunism suggest that women had to overcome great barriers by struggling with their parents to follow their spiritual path. Perhaps the most difficult barrier for women in early Chinese because of time limit, I will skip 2 paragraphs. And I'm going to talk about Terigata. But please look at my table and you can understand. I hope you can understand what I'm talking. On the other hand, in the Terigata, women who renounced the worldly life came from a variety of social classes. The largest number of women in the Terigata also joined the Bhikshuni Sangha as unmarried women. The second large numbers of women are widows, including Mahapadvata Gotami and Siddhartha's harem. All of the women in the category of widows in the Terigata belong to the 500. The 500 were women who belonged to the 2 clans, the Sakyan and the Korean. Yet, we cannot say that all of the 500 women were widows. Some of them might have been nurses, dancers, musicians, and slaves at King Stodana's court. Of course, all 500 women who joined the Bhikshuni Sangha with Mahapadvata Gotami cannot be included into our discussion, since it is impossible to determine how many women actually achieved arahantship and how many bosses in the Terigata belong to the enlightened women of the 500. The third large category of women in the Terigata joined the Bhikshuni Sangha as wives, children, old women, and homeless women also joined the monastic life. Some of the children in the Terigata followed their parents' path in becoming nuns. The rest of the categories of women in the Terigata pertain to mothers, queens, princesses, consorts, Jain nuns, courtesans, prostitutes, and slaves. These diverse categories of the women in the Terigata are not included in the Bhikshunism. The Bhikshunism contains no comparable categories of women to those in the Terigata. Young and old women, widows, wives, fiancées, mothers and daughters, wealthy and poor women, privileged women and prostitutes, all followed the Buddhist path, won Buddhist goal, and sang of their religious experience in the Terigata. The wide range of classes of women joining the Bhikshuni Sangha in the Terigata suggests that not only did women from various walks of life sought the admission into the Bhikshuni Sangha, but also that the Buddha's teachings reached women from high to low places in society. A comparison of the classes of the women in the 2 texts shows a distinctive difference, but a common running theme indicates that the women in both texts generally joined the monastic life through their own will and self-wishes. As a way of further comparing the women of the 2 texts, I have grouped the women's reasons for joining the Bhikshuni Sangha according to either their self-motivation or other situations that propelled them to seek the monastic life. Table number 2 and the page number 3 of my table. Please pick up. And table number 2 reveals that the majority of women in the Bhikshunism and the Terigata joined the Bhikshuni Sangha by their own will. In the Bhikshunism, 41 out of 65 joined the Bhikshuni Sangha voluntarily. In those biographies, women show a great deal of religious aspiration and determination to pursue their spiritual freedom. Interestingly, many biographies of the nuns in the Bhikshunism record women's ability to read and write, especially of a high rate of literacy among the women before they joined the monastic life. Yet, it would be rash to say that the women who joined the monastic life in early Chinese Buddhist history of the Buddha choose their spiritual path. 71 out of 73 in Theravada became nuns voluntarily. Unlike the Theravada, there is no woman who joined the Bhikshuni Sangha against her will in the Bhikshunism. Yet, the Bhikshunism does contain a category of women with unclear background regarding the circumstances which led them to enter the monastic life, whereas older women in the Theravada clearly indicated in commentaries as to whether they became nuns by their self-wishes or by other situations. Even though 22 biographies in the Bhikshunism do not clearly provide whether the woman joined the monastic life by their own free will or other situations. 8 biographies included in the category of children entering the monastery can be included into the category of self-initiated monastic life. As we discussed earlier, those who lived in the monastery as children are required to complete a period of probation and education under the guidance of fundamental precepts such as 10 precepts for Samanicas or 6 precepts for Samanas. And I'm going to skip 3 paragraphs. I'm going to read my conclusion. In the Bhikshunism, the majority of women joined the Bhikshuni Sangha as unmarried women or children, whereas the Theravada shows that women with different social backgrounds joined the Bhikshuni background and secular literacy education in the Bhikshunism, so the life of nuns as unmarried women or children, women from the high to the lower classes of society, without distinctions in the Theravada, mingled into the Bhikshuni Sangha. Almost all of the women in both texts renounced the world by their own free will. However, the most strikingly different group of women of the Theravada from those of the Bhikshunism is a group of women who achieved spiritual awakening before joining the Bhikshuni Sangha. 12 out of 73 women in the Theravada became nuns after they attained a certain level of spiritual awakening. As having become Sotapanna, still, before they were ordained, 2 women became nuns after attaining 1 agami, non-maternal. 3 joined the Bhikshuni Sangha after they became arahats. The Holy One, the final stage of sainthood that can be reached as a human being in early Buddhism. The Bhikshunism contains only the biographies of the remarkable nuns, and the Theravada bears only the enlightened verses from the Arahant nuns. Thus, we should not conclude that the woman in the 2 texts represent the whole picture of the first Buddhist woman in the 2 Buddhist traditions. Thank you.
She's from Vietnam. She's also a PhD candidate from Delhi University, India. And her topic today is Forging Friendship, 3 Traditions of Vietnamese Buddhism.
Honored student of Dharma and Sangha, respected Buddhists, respected bhikkhunis, sisters and brothers in the Dharma. I'm sorry today I'm not well, so I can't speak loudly, and sometimes I have to stop for a cough. Please excuse me. So my topic today is Forging Friendship, 3 Traditions of Vietnamese Buddhism. As you know, in Vietnam there are not only 2 sects but 3 sects of Buddhism. That they are Mahayana, Theravada, and Mendicant. invited us to talk about this topic. First of all, I will say about a brief history of the insect, and then I will say about the similarity, the difference, and the harmony between among the three sects. Buddhism came to Vietnam more than 2,000 years ago in the 1st century AD. Geographically, Vietnam is like the intersection between India and China, and therefore it is also called Indochina. At that time, people who made the trip from India to China or vice versa, by land or by sea, they had to cross Vietnam. Vietnam, therefore, was a good place to stop. Vietnam, therefore, was a good place to stop by foreign business people as well as Buddhist monks. By the end of the 2nd century, Vietnam developed a major Buddhist center in the region, commonly known as the Reload Center. Here, many Mahayana Sutras and the Agama were translated into Chinese, including the Sutra of 42 chapters, the Anapanasati, the Vesantara Jataka, the Milindapanha, etc. When Buddhism spreads to Vietnam, it consists of two traditions, the northern or Mahayana and the southern Theravada. Being close to China and being twice annexed by the Chinese, Mahayana Buddhism of Vietnam was greatly influenced by the Mahayana Buddhism of China, with dominant traditions of Chan, Pure Land, and Tantra. Mahayana sect is the most popular in Vietnam, for it has existed for more than 20 centuries and contributed a great deal to the protection and development of the country. About 70% of the Buddhists follow this tradition in Vietnam. The southern part of Vietnam was originally occupied by the Champa or Cham and the Cambodian or Khmer people who followed both Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism. Since the Vietnamese conquered and assaulted the land in the 15th century, the dominant Vietnamese followed the Mahayana tradition, while the ethnic Cambodian practiced the Theravada tradition. Theravada Buddhism came to be known to the Vietnamese only in 1940 by Venerable Vangsa Rakita or Ho Tong in Vietnamese, who learned Theravada meditation and was ordained in Cambodia. In 1940, he went back to Vietnam and established Bu Quang Temple, the first Theravada temple for Vietnamese Buddhists at Loyang, Thu Duc, now a district of Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City. In 1957, the Vietnamese Theravada Buddhist Sangha congregation was formally established and recognized by the government with the efforts of the pioneers in teaching meditation and translating the Pali text into Vietnamese, together with the presence and support of Venerable Narada from Sri Lanka. More and more Buddhists are attracted to the Theravada tradition. I want to add something about Venerable Narada. He came and stayed in Vietnam for a long time, and he also established some monasteries which are very big and very beautiful in Vietnam. And until now, many people still remember and respected his contribution to Vietnamese Theravada Buddhism. In 1946, another sect called Mendicants, or Kukshi in Vietnamese, was founded by Venerable Minh Dam Quang. This founder ordained himself, took the name of Minh Dam Quang, and started teaching the Dharma. He accepted many disciples, both male and female, and built many monasteries in the south of Vietnam. This sect is a mixture between Mahayana and Theravada. They selected some monks from both traditions for their practice, wearing yellow robes, begging for alms, keeping vegetarian diet, and learning the doctrines from both schools. It is the brief history of the three sects in Vietnam. And now I will say about the similarity, the differences among the three sects. Basically, the three sects have the same foundations. They all accept Shakyamuni Buddha as a teacher. They believe and teach the doctrines of the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and the dependent origination. They all accepted the truth of anicca or impermanent, dukkha or suffering, and anatta or no soul. But beside the similarity, there are some points which they differ. The Theravada tradition preserves all the rules laid down by the Buddha. They wear yellow robes, go around for alms, take whatever food is given, and practice meditation. By the way, I want to mention one sad phenomenon in Vietnam nowadays. Now, recently, there are some people who are not monks and nuns, but they disguise as monks and nuns. They wear yellow robes and go around to beg for alms and money, but their manner is not proper. So they make the lay Buddhists confused. They don't know who is the real monk and who is the false monk. So this is a confusing situation. That's why the Vietnam Buddhist Sangha decided, and they suggested the monks, the Theravada monks and the mendicants monks stopped going around for alms for a time. And they are trying to find out a solution to solve this problem. So now the Theravada monks and the mendicant monks in Ho Chi Minh City, especially in the city, they cannot go out and go around for alms. And then the lay Buddhists have to bring the food to the temple, or they donate the money for the lay Buddhists to cook in the kitchen of the temple. And the Theravada serve their spiritual service in the Pali language. Meanwhile, the Mahayana Buddhism adapts to the national culture and customs. Mahayana monks and nuns wear gray or brown, keep vegetarian diet. Sometimes they can take dinner, drive cars, work in the field, or even have a factory to produce tofu, soy sauce, etc. to support themselves. Their ritual service is in Vietnamese language or sometimes in Chinese language too. The mendicants also use Vietnamese language in their chanting and keep vegetarian diet like the Mahayanists. Theravada emphasizes the practical realities, and meditation would lead to swift self-emancipation. Mahayana teaches the bodhisattva ideal and stresses the goal of liberating all sentient beings, leading to the complete enlightenment. Consequently, their service to the society also differs. While Theravadins organize meditation centers where all Buddhists, lay or ordained, can come to stay and practice meditation, and open Pali and Abhidhamma courses for monks and nuns, and even for laymen, Mahayanists focus in preaching, opening of orphanage and kindergarten, illness, adding to victims of natural disasters, and so on. The mendicants are also very active in these social activities. On the three sects ordained women, but only Mahayana and mendicant accept bhikkhunis. The bhikkhunis of these two sects have their own monasteries. Some nunneries are well organized, where more than 100 nuns learn and practice Buddhism. They are very active in social service. Some of them work as teachers, nurses, or social workers. Some nuns even hold positions in the government as well as in the Vietnamese Buddhist Sangha. Theravada nuns mostly live in monks' temple. They observe 8 or 10 precepts. They are very few in number and concentrate mainly in practicing meditation. Recently, however, some nuns have started their own nunneries, and at present there are 3 separate nunneries. This year, 4 nuns, including me, got full ordination in Sri Lanka in Theravada tradition, but it may take a long time and much effort to establish a Theravada Bhikkhuni order in Vietnam. Though there are some differences in theory and practice of the 3 sects, they have been coexisting harmoniously in the same country and together they are leading the spiritual life of Vietnamese people. Its sect tries to preserve its own tradition and respects the contribution of the other sects. The Vietnamese Buddhists are free to choose a sect suitable to their temperament to follow, and they can change to another sect if they desire. For example, for me, formerly I belonged to the Mahayana tradition, for many years. But after that, I changed to Theravada tradition. But until now, I still keep a good relationship with my teachers and masters in Mahayana tradition. It doesn't matter which text we choose and follow. Though there are some extremists who, due to lack of knowledge or misunderstanding, exalt their own sect and disparage the others, most well-informed Buddhists know the historical features and value of each sect. At the Institute of Higher Buddhist Studies, where monks and nuns of all the three sects are trained, students are instructed in both canonical and non-canonical subjects, including the doctrines of the three main Buddhist schools, the Theravada, the Sarvastivada, and the Mahayana. On the Buddhist ceremonies, such as the Buddha Jayanti Day, Buddhists of all the three sects gather together and pray for the peace and prosperity of the country. After the Liberation Day of the South, the Vietnam Buddhist Sangha was founded in 1981 to unify all Vietnamese Buddhist sects and organizations. The Vietnam Buddhist Sangha have an ancient program for national cooperation and harmony among all Buddhist sects. They established a system of monastic education and have been promoting friendship among world Buddhist organizations for peace on earth. That's all for my topic. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for clarifying this Vietnamese Mahayana and Theravada publication and tradition in Vietnam. Our next third speaker today, this afternoon, is Elisa Nesosi from Italy. She's a graduate student at Capo Scala University of Venice, and she's a student at the Department of Oriental Languages and Civilization, and her paper is titled on Sexuality, Discipline, and Ethics.
I try to analyze the relationship between sexuality, discipline, and ethics. I think that the Buddhist monastic community is a sort of ideal society whose members must adopt a high level of conduct, which includes renouncing the pleasure of the senses. What are the rules that the bhikshu and the bhikshuni must conform to, and above all, what is the moral conception associated with this code of conduct? Speaking of sexuality in these terms means either to explain every disciplinary rule which forbids every kind of sexual desire, or to try to understand why the Vinaya compilers formulated such a wide body of precepts. I refer to the Chinese monastic community and especially to the Dharmagupta Vinaya. The main aim of my paper is the latter, is to bring concepts such as celibacy and sexual abstinence to a specific conception of desire, purity, and corporeity, and to explain how sexuality is connected with discipline and ethics, Vinaya Pitaka and Dharma. The first chapter is about the meaning of celibacy. Every member of the Sangha, regardless of whether he or she has received complete ordination or not, is required to commit to sexual abstinence and celibacy. Admission into the monastic community means the complete subjugation of the sexual instinct through a long process of practice and meditation. Physical abstinence is only the first step. For monks and nuns, celibacy, often referred to by the Indian term brahmacharya, is a choice and a personal responsibility. Those who receive complete ordination devote themselves to voluntary abstention from sexual activity for as long as they live. In the Buddhist texts, we often find the idea that celibacy means a life of perfect holiness or purity. In spite of their deeply antisocial connotation, and therefore in a sense an anti-Confucian character, these cardinal principles derived from the original Buddhism have never been debated, not even by the early Chinese Buddhism. These we can deduce from isolated literal evidence and from the early monastic codes of discipline. Sexuality, abstinence, and celibacy within disciplinary limits were never considered a cultural dilemma, and nobody tried to avoid this duty. Buddha in the Anguttara Nikaya says that monks must live a celibate life to eliminate the pleasures of the senses, to abandon evils, to free oneself from human passions, and to destroy the craving for existence. Since the sexual instinct is the strongest of human instincts, to restrain it requires great determination and great strength. That's why most of the ancient religions consider chastity and self-restraint as the most praiseworthy of the human actions. Sexual desire is regarded as one of the biggest obstacles in the journey leading to nirvana. It is really dangerous because it indissolubly binds human beings either to the continual samsara cycle or to the ties of familial lineage. On the one hand, sexual intercourse leading to procreation binds us to the duties of domestic life and to the detriment of spiritual practice. On the other hand, it shapes the foundations of the Buddhist doctrinal structure. The suffering or existential pain needs to be understood as the frustration of desire, as the failure of the continuous effort to fulfill a changing, non-permanent, and unsubstantial reality. Attachment and desire are deeply rooted in the ignorance of the awakening of self. Freedom is accessible only to those who, in giving up desire, overcome ignorance. Attachment, passions, and desire are the most important elements that influence the will and determine the quality of an action, which in its turn, by producing karmic activity, puts the human being into the samsaric cycle. Passion acts and their retribution obstruct the way to liberation. Although the various Buddhist traditions agree on the basic doctrinal questions, they differ in the acknowledgement of their problematic nature. In this regard, there is considerable discrepancy, particularly between the Hinayana and Mahayana traditions. Even though I don't want to go deeper into this matter, I want to consider only those aspects that I can deduce from the codes of discipline, to highlight how sexuality and desire can assume a different meaning for the Bodhisattva. Assuming the identification of Sambriti Satya through a water convention with Paramatta Satya, ultimate meaning of truth, in the Mahayana tradition, ultimate alignment is an affirmation of this reality, purified from all its negative aspects. As a consequence, he or she who is really free acts without any attachment to action. From this point of view, the sexuality is motivated by compassion, is not a transgression, by a means of original alignment. From this perspective, passion can be transformed into an instrument useful to people, because it is motivated by the compassion that the Bodhisattva feels for all sentient beings and by a pure and detached mental attitude. In the second chapter, I want to explain the relationship between the rules of discipline and sexuality. Entering the monastic community requires compliance to the rules of discipline. This is the first actual step towards the elimination of sensual pleasure. We can consider precepts as commandments, rather clear guidelines that help the members of the Sangha control their own physical and verbal actions and help to develop an awareness of the personal mental attitudes required for living harmoniously together. The very first of the Parajika rules is a precept that categorically forbids all kind of sexual relations. In the Bhikshuni Vinaya, it is said that this rule comes from the case of Shudina, a young man who left his family and wife to join the Sangha. His mother implored him to come back home to fulfill his filial duties and continue his lineage. After a sharp refusal, she organized a plot against him with the ex-wife who had to seduce him and become pregnant by him. After some hesitation, he succumbed to his sexual instinct. After more investigative stories, we can find in the Vinaya the definition of the first Parajika rule. Okay, I don't read the rules here. And as far as the Bhikshuni Pratimoksha is concerned, the first Parajika rules is almost the same. Whereas in the Bhikshu Vinaya, we find that only the first Parajika rule has to do with sexuality. In the Bhikshuni Pratimoksha and in the Sutra Vibhanga rules number 5 and 6 are also concerned with the relationship between Bhikshunis and men. The story is told of a young and pretty nun who after having entered the Bhikshuni Sangha, still feel passions for a man. Having the opportunity to be alone with him and being full of desire, they embrace and caress each other. After becoming acquainted with this fact, Buddha laid down the Parajika rules number 5 and 6. The precept that establishes chastity is accepted by the novice upon entering the monastic community. During the ceremony of ordination, the novice receives the 10 rules, the third of which is concerned with the prohibition of sexual activity. In the Bhikshuni Vinaya, in addition to the Parajika rules, there are also 29 different precepts regarding sexuality in other categories, 3 precepts in the Sagavashesha section and 26 in Payantika section. From the analysis of these rules of discipline emerge some important topics, such as the relationship between the two sexes and between the Bhikshu and the Bhikshuni Sangha, the theme of homosexuality and masturbation. With reference to lesbianism, the Bhikshuni Vinaya also adopted a masculine terminology, regarding this kind of sexual activity as a mere imitation of the heterosexual relationship. Lesbianism is sometimes considered unimportant because in some contexts sexual activity is condemned only if it implies the emission of semen. Masturbation, this question is written more widely in other versions of Bhikshuni Vinaya, for example in the Mahasamhika Vinaya. Masturbation is considered dangerous and treated as an infraction to the code of discipline, only if the monk or nun who practices it is motivated by intention and lustful desire. With regard to the relationship between Bhikshu and Bhikshuni, we have also to mention the importance of Gardana. Although these rules are accepted by the nun at the moment of her entering the Sangha, they are not always strictly applied in contemporary China, especially in small communities. Last year, I visited a Chinese monastery where 3 nuns and 7 monks live together. In this monastery, the sharing of responsibilities and division of labor is not based on gender, but rather on seniority. This was an exception. Okay. In the 3rd chapter, I try to make a relation between sexuality and purification. Like with any other infractions, those who transgress the precept which impose chastity on all members of the monastic community can be considered pure and in harmony with the community, hence they are expelled. It is believed that impurity doesn't come from a physical contamination associated with sexual transgressions. Rather, it derives from a kind of contamination at the level of the will. From the Hindu perspective, speaking of impurity means to speak of corporeal impurity and physiological functions. In contrast, the Buddhist perspective maintains that purity is an ethical concept related to the mind, the will, and the path toward alignment. Buddha's teaching explains that freedom and wisdom is accessible only to those who, having practiced a path of purification, can overcome ignorance and attachment to this existence. The person who kills, steals, lies, commits adultery, is hatred, anger, or disappointment, has not to overcome such cancers that pollute existence and can be considered impure. Purification doesn't mean the negation of the physical body or the negation of bodily functions. Purification means freedom from all these hindrances. Any given sexual act is first of all the result of a moral and psychological disturbance, and only indirectly connected with the body. From this perspective, the body is only a channel through which individual intentions and wills manifest themselves. Buddha doesn't want his disciple to have disgusting feelings regarding their bodies. It simply wants them to understand their impermanence and consequently to abandon misguided beliefs about their own bodies. Purification is realized only through ritual action based on completely inner ethical convictions. The removal of every impure bodily, verbal, and mental act comes with a deeply ethical attitude and an accumulation of good actions, wisdom, and concentration. Just as good actions lead to complete purification, in the same way, bad actions constrain existence to precariousness. The Upojata, the ritual of collective confession and purification of the monastic community, is the first step toward a complete inner purification. Over time, the word Upojata has been given many different interpretations, but they are all concerned with the concept of purity. As a matter of fact, by the confession of every sin and every kind of desire, the individual's vital spirit and the spirit of the community are purified. Xuanzang defined Upojata as growth, Yi explained it as increasing of purity. In the last chapter, its integrity is not only moral but also physical, evidenced by the specific sexual feature. Before receiving complete ordination, the candidate is sent out of the assembly and asks questions such as, I don't read the question. Okay. It is interesting that virility and physical perfection are prerequisites typical of not only of the Buddhist tradition, but also of different religious traditions. In the Catholic Church, in this paper, my purpose is not to exhaustively clarify the origins and the real meaning of those prerequisites of qualification, but for each member to physically be able to meet the requirements of the standard. I think that this aspect was particularly important in the very, which means that everybody is responsible for his own spiritual progress and his own physical body care. Okay. I believe that practical explanation aren't enough, meaning that Buddhism gives through sexuality and corpority. I have already mentioned that sexuality is negatively considered because it is a result of desire coming from an unenlightened mind. It would seem that if the desire is eradicated, then sexuality will also be eradicated. Excluding some rare exceptions, this doesn't include the belief that in every human being there is an eternal psychic or spiritual self which takes up the body. Okay, mind and body are not separated. The mental processes are directly to the corporeal processes and vice versa. When we speak of individual being, we are speaking of a combination, a psychophysical continuum, a physical and mental mix. And so I explained that sexuality it can be considered from two points of view. From the mental point of view, as a combination of the karma accumulated in previous life, of the mental external stimuli, and combination of mental activity. This is combined with the physical aspect that is the genital. And in my paper, I have explained why, for example, hermaphrodites or bisexual beings are not, for them is not permitted the admission into the monastic community. I only give some suggestions. Okay, thank you.
Our last speaker is, of course, Tsomo, and she's an assistant professor of University of San Diego, and her topic is sisters across cultures, inclusiveness and empathy in the Buddhist women's movement.
That is among the Buddhists of the world. We are here to learn from each other, to learn about our meditation practices, our philosophies, our chanting practices and our experiences as Buddhist women on the path. When we began to meet in Bodh Gaya in 1987, many of us had little knowledge and many misconceptions about other Buddhist traditions. Some Theravada practitioners thought that the Mahayana was not Buddhism at all, but a perverted form of Hinduism. They thought that the Mahayana nuns and monks were not nuns and monks at all because some of them ate after 12 o'clock. Some Mahayana practitioners thought that the Theravada practitioners were selfish people working for their own benefit with no concern for the welfare of sentient beings. Some Theravada and Mahayana practitioners thought that the Vajrayana practitioners were sex maniacs engaging in endless secret orgies under the guise of Buddhism. So one of the great achievements of Sakyadhita has been bridging Buddhists of different traditions, bringing them together, not merely to eat and pose for photographs, but to discuss important issues concerning our traditions on a very deep level. We are helping each other gain a greater understanding of other traditions, including other religious traditions, and the core teachings of Buddhism. We are helping each other appreciate the richness and beauty of the many cultural and philosophical developments within Buddhism over the ages. We are now linked and must pay our respects to the God of electronic communications for bringing us closer together. That's email, which has helped a lot in facilitating the organization of this conference. Here we see robes of many colors. We hear the Dharma spoken in different languages. Some traditions prostrate from a kneeling posture, some from a standing posture, and some prostrate full length. Despite these different forms, we all share a common commitment to the practice of the Buddhist teachings as we understand them. Now, philosophically, there are differences as we have learned. Some Buddhists are going for liberation from samsara. Some Buddhists are going for full Buddhahood. Some Buddhists are striving to become better human beings. Some people are doing all of the above. And another sort of misconception we've broken down is that I've been finding that many Theravada practitioners are actually planning to become bodhisattvas and Buddhas. So it doesn't depend on the color of the robes. A lot of it depends on our motivation, and we have the freedom to choose which path we would like to follow. The external forms and hierarchies in Buddhism were created by men. I think it's important to recognize. Women have little or no power in existing Buddhist institutions. So we have nothing to cling to in terms of these institutions. We're not invested in these institutions. Women now have the freedom to see beyond the forms and to create new forms that are relevant to the present day. Women have the freedom to break through traditional boundaries. For example, Sister Malia is my best friend. Sister Malia, who presented this morning. We are true spiritual sisters. She does Buddhist meditation, and I try to live by the teachings of Jesus. When I'm in Honolulu, we go every place together. To church, to meditation centers, to temples. She invites me to teach meditation and the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra to her students at St. Francis, which is a Catholic high school. One day, Sister Malia took me for a pearl tea at a tea stand in Honolulu. The next time I went to that tea stand, the woman asked me, very seriously, how can you be friends? looked at her curiously, and she said, "But you belong to different religions." As if, because we belong to different religions, it was impossible for us to be friends. So I was trying to explain to her that we were two spiritual sisters. We have the same goals, many of the same goals. Now, another point. This is a whole mixture of ideas because I've been a little bit busy. But one hierarchy, talking about breaking through boundaries, crossing boundaries. One hierarchy we have to consider beside gender hierarchies is the hierarchical relationship between monastics and lay people. I am not advocating that we do away with the traditional system altogether. I believe that monastic practice is very valuable for those who are interested in it. It should be available as an option, in my opinion. The tradition of seniority in the Sangha also is very handy when it comes to organizing seating in the teachings and avoiding traffic jams at the doorway as we leave the meditation hall. It also helps engender respect. My first Bhikshuni ordination was in Korea. And as soon as I was ordained, whenever I went to visit a Buddhist monastery, they would call all of the nuns who were junior to me in ordination status, and they would bow to me because I was a bhikshuni, and so the novices would bow to me. As an American, this custom took a little getting used to. It was quite unusual, for me, uncomfortable, actually. But gradually, I came to understand that their bows represented a heartfelt respect, and that the respect that the bhikshunis in Korea feel for each other extends to every aspect of life. So there is value, besides the practical benefit of moving from place to place and knowing where you belong in the line. I think that it helps very much in developing respect amongst the Buddhist community. But as Ms. Ling Rongju reminded us yesterday, many Buddhist lay people practice Buddhism very well, perhaps better than we nuns. And the lay people also form the base of support for the preservation and flourishing of Buddhism. As Dr. Shoyo Taniguchi expressed this morning, there are also Buddhists ordained in the Japanese and other traditions who are also excellent practitioners of Buddhism, even though they may not follow orthodox celibate monastic traditions. Here I think there may be some misunderstanding, which we should discuss further about the relationships between the laity and the monastics. Once a lay woman came up to me at a Buddhist women's retreat and asked, "Why do you think you're so much better than me? Why do you think that your practice is better than mine?" But I had never said or even thought that I was better than she was. In fact, I had never even met her. She knew nothing about me. So she was assuming something which had no basis in my mind, or hopefully in my actions. So that was an interesting experience, especially because I was a new monastic. I had no basis of support. I had no respect from my society. I had no food, no place to stay, no training, and no community in my country. I was completely on my own, and often running into a lot of obstacles. Perhaps this woman had seen pictures of Buddhist monks in Thailand receiving food from lay women, and assumed that I received respect and support from lay people, but that was not the case. In the West, sometimes people can be quite rude to Buddhist monastics because they don't understand Buddhism. Sometimes people come up to me on the street and ask, "What are you?" And I say, "Well, I would be human." Or, depending on the situation. Usually it's an occasion to start a really interesting conversation about spirituality, about Buddhism, and so forth. But people really have no idea in Western countries where we're coming from. And in fact, many people think that Buddhism is a very bad thing. We worship idols, we're parasites that eat off the society. We have abandoned our social responsibilities, and so forth. Many misconceptions about what it means to be a Buddhist and a monastic practitioner. In the United States, I receive almost no support from lay people. Sister Malia often drops by with breakfast or snacks for me, but she is a nun and a Christian. The advantage to being a nun, I feel, to being a monastic, is simply that we have more time for practice than most lay women. We don't have to worry about body image. We save money on shampoo. We don't have family responsibilities, so we can work full-time for Buddhism. There are many people who wanted to be at this conference, but could not because they have family responsibilities. And that in part explains why there's so many monastics, more monastics perhaps than lay people. It's about 50-50 anyway. People assume that Buddhist nuns in the West, people assume that Buddhist nuns receive training and support from a monastic order, like the exemplary Catholic religious orders. But in many countries, nuns do not receive sufficient support. That is why I worked my way through a PhD so that I can eat and have some means to travel and work for Sakigita and support projects for Buddhist women. Oh, getting to my topic here. Venerable Rinpoche. She did not say this as a criticism. Instead, she taught me not only how to shave my own head, but the importance of self-reliance. She also taught me the importance of supporting each other in learning to become self-reliant instead of always depending on others. The Lotus Ashram, located just down the hill here, grows many of its own vegetables, and the nuns are highly self-sufficient, besides helping many others, like the Sakigita conference. They folded your blankets on your beds, among many other supportive ways of helping this conference. Now, my experience at the Lotus Ashram also taught me the importance of appreciation as such a tremendous example for me. Many women and nuns are not, oh, I already said that. Okay. Let's see, I've expressed. Loving kindness and compassion are wonderful qualities which all sentient beings should strive to embody. Feminist philosophers have noticed, however, that women often are expected to care for men, and sometimes their caring is evident in many cultures. The expectation that women should please men has led to sexual slavery, for example, the sexual slavery of Buddhist women in Korea, and today there's sexual exploitation in many Buddhist countries, which is an issue that I think we should address. I hope that we can join our energies and resources together and try to address some of these urgent issues facing Buddhist women today. Now, gender discrimination can be subtle or blatant. My point here is that women should support women, as well as Buddhism in general, as well as monks. Buddhist monks call us when they need people to cook and clean for their temples, and we happily pitch in and help. They call us to organize Dharma activities and fundraise to finance the building of their monasteries. The major donors to Buddhism in every country are women, both lay women and nuns. But when it comes time to appoint the abbot or successor of the temple, it is almost always a male. This has been a pattern since earliest Buddhist times. With mindfulness, we should notice these patterns. With wisdom, we should question them. With skillful means, we should work to change them. I was going to say a few words about why there aren't more men and monks here at our conferences. But since the head of the Taipei Buddhist Association honored us with a visit today, I cut out that paragraph. We also appreciate Venerable Chuang Dao, who spoke the first day of the conference, and Kevin Zhou, who stayed up all night helping us with our conference programs, and Dr. Shang Zhou Yo, who is offering his wholehearted support for our conference and future Sakadita activities. I want to support heartily all the men who have supported the empowerment of Buddhist women, and acknowledge the tremendous support for Sakadita that I have received from them. So part about alliances is not only alliances between Buddhist lay women and nuns, but also between Buddhist women and Buddhist men. We need allies in our struggle. And Buddhist men are very powerful, committed allies. Once we win them to our side, they can help us a lot. Okay, one last point. Another issue Buddhists must address is sectarianism. One deeply disturbing trend in contemporary Buddhism, not only here in Taiwan but also in other countries, is the tendency to form alliances, allegiances, to particular goes into promoting one's own guru and one's own organization. Energy that could be used to provide food and education to poor Buddhist women or to liberate thousands of Buddhist women from sexual servitude. Huge temples stand empty, while needy Buddhists lack even the most basic medical care. We need to question our priorities and understand how we may form attachments to teachers and organizations. Teachers and organizations are extremely important, but can also be extensions of our ego. Clinging to self can be extended to clinging to our countries, our traditions, and to our organizations. So I want to encourage us all to support each other's activities. Most of us here are already doing that. We are alliances. Thank you.
Significance of women in the Buddhist movement. We have a value made our significance. We have about 20 minutes for question and answers, and I'd like to invite anybody to ask a question to the four participants here this afternoon. Anybody would like to start some questions and comments?
Venerable Sukdam Sunim has in your first Buddhist domain of the early Chinese tradition and the ancient Indian tradition. From what I know of the Tsomo, it was composed about the 6th or the 7th century, if I'm right.
And 6th between the Venerable Buddha.
So the question is, I translated this from English to Sinhala for the benefit, Sinhala is my language, for the benefit of the nuns in Sri Lanka. And my question is, now the ancient period when Buddha lived, 600 BC, where in the Therigatha, the life stories of the Buddhist nuns who lived in the 600 BC before Christ are discussed, and in Tsomo, it is the nuns who lived before the 6th or 7th century. For example, the Buddhist nun who gave, the team of Buddhist nuns who gave higher ordination, Bhikshuni ordination to the nuns in Nanjing, the Chinese nuns in Nanjing, is described. That is in the 428 and 433 My question is, did you, in your study, did you consider the historic, there's a period difference of age, period of about 1,000 years. Because of that, did you consider, in dealing with this, did you consider the historical, social, and cultural differences of different periods? Because I see in certain nuns' biographies, there are distinct cultural and social differences.
Yeah, I considered some, but I just studied just my main thesis. But my full paper I discussed about, so you mean society, like I considered like, for example, the woman in China or in Asian India. Actually, like you mentioned yesterday, was like property of man. And then in Chinese fictionism, and the woman were like recorded by their like their father's last name, and then if they married, they were mentioned by their husband. Like in India too, during the time of the Buddha.
Thank you. I would very much like to read that, your paper. My second question is to my old friend, Venerable Liu Pap. I know in the Vietnamese, among the Sangha, there is a very strong formal connection, formal links between the Mahayana and the Theravada. I'm not very familiar with the mendicants, Sangha, Bhikshu Sangha. But is there a formal link between the Bhikshuni Sangha of the Theravada and the Mahayana and the mendicants? I mean a formal link, some kind of formal link.
Not at all.
Thank you. My next question is to, of course, Elisa on homosexuality. And I am very curious to know whether there is, in the Dharmagupta tradition, because I will tell you why I am curious to know. I did a study of the homosexuality in Theravada Buddhism, especially in response to a presentation made by the Dalai Lama when His Holiness Dalai Lama and I were panelists in Germany some time ago. And what I would like to know is that, is there any kind of, is the in the Dharmagupta Vinaya, is homosexuality especially looked down upon more than heterosexuality? Or is it almost the same? It's not a big deal. I mean, when you compare, it is the nuns and monks are supposed to practice celibacy, abstain from sexual relations, but is there a kind of a significant difference as in other religious traditions? You got my point? Homosexuality is considered very bad, in other words, looked down upon in other religious traditions, much more than heterosexuality. Is that so in the Dharmagupta Vinaya? I'm not familiar with.
I don't know if I understand well your question, but I accept that in the Dharmagupta Vinaya, the theme of homosexuality, I think, is treated wider because there is also a sort of classification, yeah, of the different kinds of homosexual beings. But this sort of classification in 6 kinds of homosexual beings is only treated by a masculine perspective, and feminine perspective is not treated because, as I have said, sometimes the relationship between women are not considered so important like the relationship between men, because in this regarding this aspect, they consider the relationship only if it implies the emission of the semen and the penetration, you know. And so I don't know if I have answered your your question or not.
But nothing, no special denigration, no special degradation, no special condemnation.
Yes, it is condemned, but
Just
not
like
so the masculine.
Excuse me, may I add a bit more? I agree with you. I studied dialogue, but my personal view about sexuality, and we talked about in our classroom in University of Virginia too. But I think in America, Americans, there are many lesbians are gays. So that's one of the issue in Buddhism too, and then also in some other religions. But my personal view, generally, I may be wrong, but that's my personal view. The Buddha, I think, always discouraged any kind of pleasure, sexual or eating. So I don't think he to say the lesbian or homosexual is better than or like some normal sex, because I talked like in the religious department at the University of Virginia, several students are gay at the Tibetan Buddhist studies, and then they are talking like whispering, Reverend in Yongchong, there are several Buddhist students, they are gay, so why not? Why not? And so that's I told them, in Buddhism actually kind of, I can say my personal view is like individualism. Whatever you do, you have to be responsible. You make your karma, we make our own karma. So any kind of desire or discourse according to Buddhism, that's my understanding.
Any other questions? Okay, further questions.
I'd like to follow up on that.
Could you use that
Yeah,
microphone,
sorry.
please?
I'd like to follow up on that point with a question about the issue of power in relationship to sexuality. Lisa, in your paper, it seems to go unaddressed. And with respect to the questions that have been raised, I'm wondering, given that the issue of power is not addressed with respect to sexual relations, what would compassionate sex look like? What does it look like historically? Or what would be an example of that in light of the fact that most often it's associated with issues of power and not with compassion?
Would you like to repeat your question? You try to rephrase that meaning, what do
Okay.
you mean
Well,
by power?
Compassion. In your paper, you make a logical leap. You say that, where's your paper? You're talking about, you were talking about kinds of action and the way one organizes one's mind, and that you leap and say, well, if the mind could be pure, then it's logically possible that one could be pure about sex. And then you say it's possible that we could have compassionate sex. So I'm interested to know what compassionate sex looks like historically, given that logical proposition. Forget, the power question is a, part B.
Maybe too difficult for me. I can try.
Because, listen, the reason I'm asking this, it seems to be the subtext of your paper, which is to address the idea that there are precepts with respect to the body, coding the body, and relating pleasure to notions of discipline. And And so that question about thinking the possibility of compassionate sex seems to be the proposition that's being proposed by this paper without, being fully fleshed out. I'm wondering if that's what you're really thinking about, or that just was a passing leap of imagination.
Maybe anybody could have some suggestions about this question, we welcome it. Okay, Lakshya tried to answer your question.
As I understand it, the precept against sexual misconduct is to refrain from harming anyone through our sexual activity. For the monks and nuns, of course, it means celibacy, but for lay people, it means staying with one partner at a time, at least. So you wouldn't have relations with someone other than your partner, because it would cause emotional harm. And these days, it could also cause physical harm. So I think it's not a bad guideline.
Any other questions?
Can I add something, please?
Oh.
Can I add something to what Venerable Lakshya said?
I couldn't hear very well. Sorry.
Can I add something to what Venerable Lakshya
To be
said?
brief, because I think
Yes.
many other
Yes, because there is a power relations involved when it is not your partner. That's one reason why the lady asked that question also. In other sexual relations, it can be, power can be the whole concept of power, unequal power between two partners can be there, can play a role.
Okay.
Yeah, I this topic. Just a comment. I think the question also stems from the fact that in the US there have been many abusive relationships between teachers and students under the guise of compassionate teaching. And I had a similar question: where in the Vinaya or anywhere does it say that compassionate sexual activity is permissive? I know in the Zen tradition, in the koans, there are koans about sexuality that teach you to not be attached to non-attachment. So you have to go over those distinctions, but it requires a purity of mind and body that apparently has not been practiced in some of those cases where teachers abuse their own students.
Any other comments regarding this issue? Sexuality, compassionate? Yes.
This isn't a comment other than on the second page of your paper, the first paragraph indicates what the original question was from my colleague on my left. It's the second paragraph, and at the end, the last sentence says, as a consequence, he or she who is really free acts without any attachment to action. From this point of view, even sexuality, if motivated by compassion, is not a transgression, but a means of reaching enlightenment. With this perspective, passion can be transformed into an instrument useful to people because it is motivated by the compassion that the I'm sorry, I mispronounced it, feels for all sentient beings, and by a pure and detached mental attitude. So that's where that question, I think, comes from.
So what's your idea on this?
I don't have any ideas because I'm not knowledgeable enough, but I think that's where the question comes from.
For explaining this passage, we have to consider also the precepts regarding bodhisattva, or the bodhisattva precept, and the vertical idea at the basis of the Mahayana tradition, which is, in this case, I think, is not, maybe it's not good here because it is not connected with the precept in the Dharmabhukta Vinaya, but it's better connected with the precept in the Brahmajala Sutra. And I make this reference maybe because in a larger some annotation about the Vajrayana traditions, and so that's why in that way I can explain it. I'm sorry, maybe it could be misunderstood.
I think sexuality is a big issue, and I think
It's only
it's only the beginning of the whole study, which may well, at least I kind of initiated this very interesting study on sexuality and other issues. So I think she's very courageous, and I think we all have to take her study as a kind of initial basis and see what kind of thing can be developed. I think it's a very interesting area, and keep it developing is what we going to like to see. I think. Any other question? We have a few minutes left. Yes.
As far as I understand about the heterosexuality, is known to be a parajika offense. But any other offense does not amount to parajika, it could be a lesser offense.
So this is kind of in relation to all the things we are sexuality we're talking about. And is there any other offense?
Excuse I'm sorry, I don't think Penero is one of parajika offense. I think it belongs to the some of the minor cases. Parajika offense for monks and nuns, like if they have intercourse or they touch each other like man and woman. But there is one or two rules in the category of minor rules. It says masturbation something. I think some looks like it says by nuns, but I don't know. I didn't go further that rules, but I'm not sure. I don't think my personal view is the homosexuals belong to the one of the rule of
Okay, there's a question about.
This is a question for Karma. You made what I thought was a really interesting point that the existing institutions were essentially created by men, and that women don't have, therefore, really a vested interest in those institutions, which frees us to create new institutions that are relevant to what's around us today. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that, and if you have specific ideas, or if you've seen models. For example, one that comes to mind is Suji. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Or I'd just like to hear a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Well, I think that this is a really rich topic. There are many new forms of Buddhism arising, new systems of precepts being created to meet modern day needs. I know a number of monks, notably Bhikkhu Buddhadasa in Thailand and Thich Nhat Hanh, who have created their own systems of precepts that are non-traditional. I'm a traditionalist. I'm quite happy with the traditional Bhikkhuni precepts, though I think there's still a lot to talk about there. And one of the problems, if we abandon the Guru Dharmas, and we're going to assume that that Venerable Kusuma is going to prove that these were never spoken by the Buddha. Therefore, the 8 Guru Dharmas are no longer an issue, they're non-issue. We're still going to have to look at traditional monasticism as it stands, and we're going to have to honestly evaluate whether what its value is for the modern world. I have no doubt that it's going to survive in Korea and Taiwan, at least for several centuries more. If planet Earth survives, that is. Which, anyway, so want to look at is, in terms of these institutions, are women really going to have a fair chance? Or, as someone said, if the Bhikkhu Sangha is corrupt, do nuns really want to be part of this traditional system? As one Sri Lankan friend said, perhaps we're barking up the wrong tree. Maybe we would be better to create something altogether new. Now the problem there is that when we begin creating totally new institutions, we're starting off on new territory, and we don't know exactly what the result will be. The Buddha was a pioneer. Let's remember, many of us are traditionalists, but let's remember that the Buddha himself was a total revolutionary. He was absolutely radical in his time. He rejected caste, he rejected creator, a supreme being, he rejected animal sacrifice, he rejected ritual, he rejected the Vedas, he rejected most of what was valued by the people of his day. And so when we cling to tradition, we have to recognize that the Buddha himself was quite revolutionary. So it's an open question whether we can create new forms that are really going to be better than the old ones, or whether we simply need to adapt the traditional models as best we can.
We may have one more question to squeeze in. Well, maybe I should opportunity for this first one.
This works. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, it's very stimulating today, both this morning's panel and this afternoon's panel. This is more of an observation. And to me, it seems one question or object for reflection is, the question is, what do we mean by Sangha? Because I've been exposed to many traditions in Asia and now kind of rediscovering the American perspective, so to speak. And what I find very refreshing from what I've heard from the discussion today is how in many different traditions, it's a certain ritual, a certain dress, a certain habit, whether one eats in the evening, so to speak, what language you use, whether you use bells and smells. And then at the same time, what is the male Sangha and what is the female Sangha? And what I find very refreshing is there are also a lot of positive models in the male Sangha. It seems the male Sangha is very organized. They talk to one another quite readily. And so here as we have become very candid about what we need, what we like, what we miss. I also think, and there also I've heard some anger, and I'm grateful that people have brought that openly, because it's better to have it open, because it just, at least we're working consciously to deal with our needs. And so, try to wrap it up here. So I find it very intriguing. Here in Vietnam is such a fruitful development, 3 different types of Sangha, and yet the women have not yet come together to just talk about the wonderful creation. And so I think there's also a lot of opportunity here. And as some, we may call it email, but I hope that we will use more of the e-female.
I think it's a comment, right? It's not a question?
It's more of a comment.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you so much for the comment. Oh, okay. There's a question from the back. Gentleman, yes? Yes, go ahead.
我是善男子，可以提问题吗？我想表达一下我对刚刚那个性讨论。
He's going to speak in Chinese, so if people don't understand Chinese, please switch on the channel.
Please be brief too, because we have to go on.
B, channel B. for the English translation. Thank you.
Next, small discussion group. So.
我想不需要放耳机，我可以你讲完我讲成英文，这样子不会那么乱的。I don't think we have to change the headsets. I just translate consecutively because it only takes a couple minutes.
就刚刚那个对于性的问题啊，就是在提出上修行上的性的那个我们要注意的那个一些差异啊。第一个我觉得在修行上，在出家众来说，第一个被转化的，就是说他并不是保有在家众那种性的渴望，他可能第一个刚刚出家的时候会被转化成饮食上的贪着，这是第一个。第二个就是修行上的性更高一层的，就是可能是在禅定中，他对于那些禅定里面的那种舒适非常的贪，他不愿意出来，他就喜欢静坐在那里。第三个就是说，大圣经典有谈到内处妙乐，那内处妙乐就是它里面的快乐是比性更细，而且更美好的。那我先讲到这里，来翻译一下，等一下我再讲。
Okay, this is I think it's a comment about it. Number one, he has 3 points. Number one, originally as a lay person, then became
就是我们8苦里面有一个5阴之胜苦，那就我的了解，其中之一的就是那个荷尔论的不平衡，就是我在出家中，他比较有时间做专业的修行，可能这边的问题，他男女的这个性不是对他根本不是问题，因为他在静坐里面，它里面荷尔论平衡，他根本不会有那些歧度。那在家中他因为不平衡，他生理自然的反应，他会寻求平衡，所以男生跟女生在一起，他觉得很好，那这是一个很自然的现象。那我要讲的就是说，在感官的那种性来说，对于5阴来说，色、受、想、行、识这5个层次来说，它是属于第2层，就是感官的觉受的方面。那通常静坐禅定比较深的话，它会进入想、行、识这比较更深层的那种里面的喜乐里面。那在这个喜乐里面，它根本就是讲，我们说天人来说，在色界跟无色界，他根本没有欲界的这些期望，因为他觉得这些太粗糙了。所以在修行上的性，我是觉得，并不是我们刚刚所讨论的那么粗糙的东西，而且是更细腻的东西，这些还是值得我们在修行上起入所担心的。
To summarize what he says, because of time is very short, he has 2 more comments. Number one, as a lay person, sometimes you run into the imbalance of your hormone in the body, and you tend to seek the balance between male and female physically. But once you get into the meditation, you may not have this problem anymore because you tend to balance your hormone already. So you don't have to suffer. This is one point. Another point is that we're talking about different levels of the senses. And as a monk or nun, of course, you tend to go into a deeper or higher level of senses. And you are kind of rather relieved from lower senses of as a lay person. So you may not have this serious problem of suffering anymore.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment. And well, thank you. I think we have to move on. And the biological issue for the sexuality problem is, we can go on to talk forever, and we have eternal interest on sexuality issues. Okay, so we have some announcement from the organized side, and we're going to divide up to small discussion groups from 3 o'clock to 4. And okay, so announcement, please.
Hello everybody, please remain in your seats for my announcement. It should only take 5 minutes. I'm going to talk about the conclusion of the conference and the tour to make sure that everybody is clear about what's going to happen afterwards. 就是挺重 中文的人啊，我现在要讲的就是这个会议结束以后，有的人会去台湾的各个岛场看一看，所以这大部分的是这个从外国来的人要知道，所以我不会翻译成中文。如果你也要参与这个就是这个游览的话，你可以来找我啊。After my announcement, we will then split into our discussion groups. Please remain in the same discussion group that you were in previously. And if you were not there yesterday, then you can come to me and we'll have a discussion group, a new discussion. Okay. This conference concludes on the morning of the 17th of July. After that, there will be buses going to Taipei for lunch, and then the tour will start. Everybody who has attended the conference can go on the buses to Taipei, have lunch there, and in the afternoon, go to the National Palace Museum. This is included as part of the conference. There's no fee for this. After we go to the Palace Museum, then the tour that will go to other temples in Taiwan will begin. And not everybody is going to attend that.
From all over the world, good evening. Thank you. Thank you. We Museum of World Religions are honored to have this opportunity to present a special program for this conference tonight. In the 21st century, we are glad to see women have been playing a very important role, and you have made a good process in the love and peace activities and movements, as well as the religious. Museum of World Religions is also there being one of you, devoting ourselves in creating love and peace of the human being around the world. In the following, the purpose and spirit of this conference, we would like to share that we have done in these 10 years with you and prepare a film as following.
This is what the Hebrew words at the bottom mean. Let's scroll along.
Being Muslim friend.
21世纪，宗教要如何走入人心，而人类要如何才能安心呢？这是世界各教各派都要思考的一件事。
10年前，一位来自台湾的佛教僧侣心道法师，他的心中有个愿景，那就是成立一座能够探索世界各宗教异同的博物馆，来保存神圣的宗教文化遗产。
因为我们每一个宗教都有它的优越感，就会造成彼此的偏见和不尊重。所以我们要彼此慢慢的互相学习、互相认识，互相的能够了解彼此的宗教和它的差异性。
心道法师祖籍云南，1948年出生于缅甸。15岁听闻观世音菩萨圣号，兴起度众的悲愿。25岁出家后，修习头陀苦行，日中1时，居踵间每日禅坐20小时以上。34岁开始修习断食，在福隆灵鹫山山洞中断食达2年。37岁那年，心道法师复食出关。就像佛陀证悟之时，并无说法之心，但是为了让众生来到灵鹫山，能够领略佛法深刻的内涵，并开启觉悟与理性的生活，于是师父规划了种种志业，开始弘法立身的工作。佛性本无差异，上帝的爱也不会因种族而有差别。欠缺认识与了解所产生的误解，却为人类带来了许多不必要的灾难。秉着爱与和平的理念，主张尊重、包容、博爱。灵鹫山佛教教团在心道法师的带领下，展开了宗教交流与创办世界宗教博物馆的努力。世界宗教博物馆由哈佛大学世界宗教研究中心苏利文博士专案研究 ，RAA 设计公司设计规划。
Well, one spring day, about 3 years ago, the Dharma master appeared in Soho with some of his followers, came up to our offices and put on the table before us an idea that was a great surprise and a great revelation, because he had a vision for a museum that would attract the international audience, that would be vested with extraordinary artifacts to show the similarity of the world's religions.
RA 总裁奥诺夫是国际顶尖的展览规划设计师，许多世界闻名的设计都是出自他的手笔，包括华盛顿特区的浩劫纪念博物馆，以及纽约自然历史博物馆的化石馆。
Well, it seemed to me both a beautiful idea and an extraordinarily challenging project.
苏利文博士是哈佛大学世界宗教研究中心主任，主要负责博物馆内展示内涵最初的发想。
We have very few places to understand other people's religions. We might understand our own in our own church or mosque or synagogue or temple. But where do we get an adequate understanding of our neighbors' religious beliefs?
We thought that the best way to get all the visitors connected to the story was to put them all through a cleansing experience, one that in fact allows them to wash their hands, to encounter water. And so the very first experience in the museum is to place your hand on a wall of water and let that water just bathe your hand, and then enter a long mist-filled hallway. And it's actually a journey, and along that journey you see projected on the walls people on the Hajj, people carrying their saints down a mountain cliffside in Peru.
Each space in the museum represents a different religious evaluation of existence and time. The long entry corridor looks at the long line of chronological history. The circular lobby looks at the recurrent cycles of liturgical time. The Gallery of Life, or the Journey of Life Gallery, looks at the life cycle of a human individual, the time of an individual's biological life, and the way in which the moments and passages of life are celebrated with ceremonies.
世界宗教博物馆的参观体验将在宗教展示大厅中达到巅峰。它将展出世界上各主要宗教的传统文物，包括基督教、犹太教、回教、佛教、印度教。
This museum, in one place and one time, contains probably the most precious set of ideas that we've ever developed. The thoughts of every great religious leader, the thought of every great religious tradition brought together in one place.
历经了10年的筹备，世界宗教博物馆终于在11月9日隆重开幕。8号开始，来自全球34个国家180位文化界、政治界、宗教界、学术界、新闻界的国际贵宾陆续抵达台湾。为了表示对这些贵宾们的欢迎之意，灵鹫山护法会特别由数百名师姐们身着旗袍，组成一支100人迎宾队伍，整齐地排列在中山路上。用最真诚的笑容与掌声迎接这些远道而来的国际贵宾。将近10点，在前导车的引领下，陈水扁总统也抵达现场，将整个开馆活动的气氛带到了最高潮。在新道法师与陈水扁总统相继进入会场之后，剪彩活动正式揭开序幕。Master 新道，
在此我们感谢各界对于宗教博物馆的支持。若不是大家无我无私的奉献，这份的理想是无法实现的。大家也无缘在此看到中国的真善美的一个面貌。
包括联合国宗教和平高峰会议秘书长巴瓦金先生、天主教台北总教区总主教狄刚先生、荷兰犹太教的大祭司等各宗教领袖与新道法师、陈总统共同进行剪彩仪式。11月9日不只是宗博开馆的纪念日，同时在全球各宗教领袖的共同见证下，由新道法师正式宣布11月9日为世界宗教和谐日。为了庆祝这个重要的日子，在台北国际会议中心举办了一场祈福大会。会中各个宗教代表不但分别上台为人民祈福，还邀请了许多国际知名的表演团体共襄盛举。 全球圣基维护国际会议也在宗博开馆当天，在台北圆山饭店隆重登场。世界各大宗教领袖为了表达对新道法师爱与和平理念的支持，上百位各国宗教领袖、学者专家不远千里，首次在台湾齐聚一堂，共同就博物馆与文化圣基保存关系、宗教与文化圣基保存关系以及博物馆与世界宗教的合作关系3项议题进行讨论，场面十分热络。而这也是有史以来全球宗教领袖首次在台湾聚会，其象征的意义不可言喻。是艺文茶会还是国际会议，所有与会来宾共同的心愿就是促成世界的爱与和平。在11月10日晚间于圆山大饭店12楼所举办的爱与和平晚宴中，除了邀请环保音乐家马修·连恩现场演唱之外，更有许多代表各个国家、各个宗教的歌舞表演穿插其中，包括飞舞署所表演的敦煌冥想、C 大调室内乐团表演的台湾民谣组曲，以及马来西亚本基舞等等，完整呈现各个宗教民族的文化之美，充分传达了地球一家的人类理想。为期3天的世界宗教博物馆开幕典礼即将圆满结束。为了让这些远道而来的贵宾们能够有机会欣赏到北台湾独特的自然美景，特别选在灵鹫山无声道场举办闭幕仪式。清新自然的空气、海天一色的美景，加上触目可及的庄严景致，让所有的国际贵宾们忘却尘世喧嚣，流连忘返。
坐落于台北都会区的世界宗教博物馆，将提供密切的宗教交流，与国际各界领袖的频繁互动。在联合国千禧年的世界宗教及精神领袖和平高峰会议，新道法师跟许多世界宗教领袖会谈，传达博物馆的理念，并获得许多支持。
Master Shen Tao, the founder of Museum of World Religion. Welcome.
这样的理念从来没有人提过，这样的崭新构想，把世界往前推进了一大步。
It works because there's an openness to the idea of sharing one of the most delicate and difficult to touch subjects in the world, religion. It's special because of the dedication of this Buddhist group, who maybe could have been the only people on the planet to have opened their arms wide enough to embrace so much diversity and celebrate it as a shared common human experience.
我希望这个博物馆能够促进各宗教的交流、团结。
After the film, I guess you might have more understanding about us. For the past 10 years, we have been work hard in promoting the world religious and peace. Besides the founder of the museum, Venerable Dharma Master Xin Dao, there is a Dharma who accompanied with him and overcome all the difficulties. During the preparation of the museum, she is our CEO of the Museum Foundation, but unfortunately she cannot make it to share her experience with us. Instead of Dharma Master Hong Chi will share her experience about the interfaith dialogue with us. Let's welcome her.
Good evening, Dharma sisters and maybe some Dharma brothers. 各位先生、女士以及各位法师们，大家晚安。Now you have seen the film because the film mostly is in Chinese, so I think I have prepared a PowerPoint so I can give you some more idea about this museum in English, and also share with you what we have done after we opened the museum and a few months before the museum opened. So I think I will speak in English, and then after this PowerPoint, I will, on behalf of Dharma Master Xin Dao, in May he has given a speech in Malaysia University. It's regarding how should we do interfaith work. So it was a kind of good speech. So on behalf of our Dharma Master Xin Dao, I will read it out and someone will translate for me. Okay, so this museum, it takes 10 years to be built. And firstly, I would like to introduce you more about Dharma Master Xin Dao. He's from Burma, and he lost his parents at age of 4, so he's an orphan. He came to Taiwan as a baby soldier at the age of 13. And when he was 25 years old, he ordained in Taiwan in this Mahayana country. But somehow he practiced not only the Mahayana, he also practiced, because he's from Burma, so he also practiced Hinayana meditation. And also, recently we practice a lot of Tibetan practice. So Dharma Master's belief is that there's only one teaching, which is Buddha's teaching. And we should not divide ourselves like we are Hinayana or we are Mahayana. No, we are son or daughter of Buddha, and we are Buddha. There's only one teaching, and that's why he dressed differently from the monk you may know. Next. This was when he was just came to Taiwan. Yes. And this is when he was just ordained at the age of 25 at the Buddha Light Mountain. And this, after he ordained, actually the next year he started to meditate in graveyard isolatedly, and for 10 years. And then after 10 years in graveyard, he found a cave, and then he lived in a cave, meditate in a cave for 2 years without eating anything, just drinking water. And that was when he was meditating in a cave. Yeah, this was the time when he was doing this fasting meditation for 2 years. And after he came out from the cave, he believed that we should practice Bodhisattva path, and we should spread out Bodhisattva spirit to the world. So, and then he made a vow, he want to build a museum of world religion, because he said, if there's no harmony among religions, there won't be harmony among in the world. There won't be world peace. So he started to do the job. And the mission of the museum is to spread out the idea of respect for all faiths, tolerance for all cultures, and love for all life. This museum, in the first few years, we try to find a place, but somehow later, there's a 2 floor are donated by a businessman, and so we are actually now located just on a department store. It's quite hard to believe a museum is located above, on the top of a department store, but that's where we are, because this building is donated in the downtown Taipei. And this also, later on, we think it symbolizes that material life and spiritual life is actually together. So it's quite interesting experience. And the content of the museum, we want to be mutual. And so we find the one on the left, Dr. Sullivan. He is the director of World Religious Studies Center, Harvard University. When he heard about this World Museum project, he gave us his support immediately. He led his students, maybe around 60, 50 of them, to study all religions and then provide us the content for each religion. And then later we found Ralph Appapong, who is considered as one of the best museum designer in America. And Ralph also is very much moved by Dharma Master Xindao's to build this museum. So 3 of them work together to build up this museum. And this is Ralph. Holocaust Museum, maybe many of you have been there, is in Washington, D.C. And it's quite famous, and its idea is about tolerance. After Jewish people are killed, how we should forgive each other. And his another work is a news museum. And this is how our museum look like. We have 2 floors. So actually there's a movement. You move in 2 floors, but you won't notice it because it's quite well designed. You go into the museum, and then there's a path, and you follow the path, and then you will go through a designed path to let you experience the commonality and similarity among religions. There's a floor, it's called Journey of Life, where you can see we separate our life into 5 sections, from the birth until our death. And we display films. Instead of giving a lot of explanations, we just show people film and then let people see how similar the celebration we receive from religions, how similar they are, no matter what kind of different race, different culture, but the blessing from religion in different stage of life are actually very similar. So, and this is how it looked like, the journey of life. So you see a lot of films. It's very modern, this museum, with a lot of multimedias and high techs. And the center of the museum, we call it Avatamsaka Wall. I think most of you understand our idea, because Avatamsaka Wall is from the Avatamsaka Sutra. In the sutra, it mentioned about the net of Indra. It says that we are like an Indra, a pearl. We are all connected, and we reflect each other. We are shining, we are so pure, we can reflect each other. So we have to remember that anger reflects anger, but love reflects love. So if we start peace from ourselves, and the others will see us in peace, and we are all connected together like the net of Indra. And now you will see some collection of our museum. We have nearly 4,000 collections, but now in the museum we display only about 300, 400 of it. So we will change our exhibition after a period of time. There are 10 religions in our museum: Christianity, Muslim, Judaism, Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism, Hindu, and Sikh. And also there's ancient religions. Now we have Maya. Ancient is Egypt, sorry, and indigenous religion. And now we have Maya as indigenous religion. So these are just some of our collections. And so this is the museum, but it's just a hardware. And once a hardware is done, now we need to give it a soul. And the soul the soul is what we do. It is a platform where we hope people can get together and know each other. And so besides the museum, we have also established some works. And I would like to share with you what we have done. Is that in this last year, you must have remembered that Afghanistan, the Buddha statue was destroyed. And after the Buddha statue was destroyed, Master has determined that he is going to do something for that statue. And so this year in April, the new government of Afghanistan announced that they will rebuild the Buddha statue. So immediately we went to Hong Kong, and Master successfully raised 1 million Hong Kong dollar. So we donate 1 million Hong Kong dollar to the Afghanistan government in May, and we are the first foreign donation to the government to support the rebuild of the Buddha statue. And also, because of the 9/11 attack, Master believed that the conflicts between the Muslim world and the Western world maybe can be solved by a third power, and that power is called soft power. And we, the Buddhists, we are the soft power. We are the one who can help to solve the problem. So since the beginning of this year, we start to host dialogues among Buddhism and Muslim. The first one we have is in Columbia University in New York. We have a Muslim and Buddhism dialogue. And the second one was May in Malaysia. We have dialogue with Dr. Chandra. And also the end of this month, we are going to Indonesia. We will have dialogue with Wahid, the former president of Indonesia. And in October, we're going to Paris to have another dialogue with the UNESCO and also European Buddhist and Muslim leaders. And this is about what we do. But we also have hope to extend our museum to an NGO organization, and we hope to promote the cooperation among religions and also to preserve sacred sites. And our next goal is actually to build a museum of a university of world religions. And now I would like to read the speech from Dharma Master Xindao. When we are reading this, we will show you the interface for some picture of it in the past 10 years, what Master Xindao have done. Okay.
灯光可不可以稍微亮一点？
还是
谢谢。
生活在这世间，从小到大，无论个人或团体，生命的问题有很多种。从出生后，从小面对环境的挑战；就学后，面对学业的压力；青春期面对生理与对生命存在根本的迷惑；创业后，面对事业的种种挑战；家庭沟通相处的困难；心中的念头烦恼不断，乃至于社群、族群、国家、生态、宗教、世界等种种问题，到底如何能够寻求真正圆满的解答的答案呢？
Before I start to translate this, let me say that I was just given this script a couple of minutes ago. This is in Chinese, so I will do my best. And I am also the interpreter for the conference in the daytime, if you still remember me. Okay, let me start. We all live in this world, from child to the adult. No matter we're individual or in a group, we always are facing a lot of problems in the life. After we have the birth, when we're little, we are facing a lot of the survival problems in our environment. And after we went to school, we also face a lot of pressure from our study. When we become the teenage, and we also face some physical issues as well as the survival of the life and some puzzles. Of course, after we start our business, and we face a lot of challenges in our business too, and family, communications, and some other issues coming up afterwards. So in our mind, we have a lot of afflictions, and we have a lot of puzzles, and as well as in this society, the race, the nation, ecosystems, religious world, etc. We are all facing all these problems. So what is the real answer for the true perfection of the solution?
心灵的、身体的病也许有药可医，但是心灵的药究竟是什么呢？是音乐，是纵欲，是感情，还是什么？这些只要有获得的快乐，就会有结束的痛苦。我发现，只有宗教真理的追求，才应该是彻底的解决之道。
Okay, we may have disease or sicknesses in our physical body, and we may find medicine for that to cure this problem, this disease. But what is the real medicine for our spirit, and what is that? Is that music? Is that indulgence, or is that emotion? And all this, if we can obtain the happiness, then we will have the result, the answer for that. But after we obtain a lot of things, we have happiness. Once we have the end of this thing we have obtained, we also facing the suffering. So we find that only pursuing the truth in the religion, we really will have the thorough solution towards the right path.
不同的宗教有不同的道路，但是真理是唯一的。而真理的核心，或许不同的宗教有不同的名称，但是只有一个共同的面貌，就叫做爱心。
Different religions, of course, have different paths, but seems that there's only one truth. The core of the truth, there's only one. It may have different names in different religions, but we all, after all, we have the common appearance, and the name of that is called love of the heart.
大家也许还记得，几年前有一部电影叫《第五元素》，讨论这个世界的组成有5种元素，就除了地、水、火、风之外，第5个元素就是爱。
Okay, maybe you still remember or recall a couple of years ago there was a movie entitled The Fifth Element. So, other than in this world, we know that the world is composed of 5 elements. Other than the earth, water, fire, and wind, the 5th element is love.
由此可见，物质世界是有差别的，有缺陷的。只有加上爱心这份珍贵的精神能量，心灵共同的语言，世间的一切才能和谐圆满。
So we can see that there's a difference in this material world, and there's defects also. So only we add love of this heart and this precious spirit energy and the spiritual common language can be harmonious, and we can reach the perfection.
爱心才是构成生命世界最重要的根本元素。爱心可以复制，可以转化，甚至于将物质转化为精神。
Heart of love composes the world and the life, which is the most important and most basic element. And this can be duplicated, it can be transformed, it can even be transformed from the material substance to the spirit.
一个真正懂得爱的真谛的人，会把他的爱心从自利的小爱转成宽广无私、全方位的大爱来利他。要从利他圆满 自利圆满到利他圆满，才能成就圆满的世界。
A person who really understands what the true love is, he will transfer this love from the self small love into a broader and selfish big love, and to be in benefit to others. So that is to say that the self perfection transform into the perfection towards others. That is what we call the attainment of the perfection.
宗教交流就是一份织网的工作，集结各宗教人士，不断地散播爱的种子。因为我们本来就生活在一个相依相存的世界，唯有互相交流，共同成就共荣，世界才有真正的和平可言。
Religious exchange and interaction is really a work of waving. And we would like to collect various religious people and collectively spreading the love to various places as the seed. Because after all, we are all survive and interdependent in this same world.
在这10多年来，为了建设中国，行遍天下，做了许多宗教交流的工作。下面想举几个故事跟大家分享。
In these past decades, in order to construct this Museum of World Religions, I personally travel a lot around the world. I have done a lot of interchange and interaction work among religions. I would like to give a few examples.
第一个是波士尼亚。在过去的300-400年，东正教、天主教、犹太教、回教等各种宗教在巴尔干半岛上混合居住，和平共处。但是近代由于民族主义的兴起、政治、经济等原因，各种种族相继寻求独立，而产生激烈冲突，引发内战，彼此残杀，造成数千人丧生。
First one is Bosnia. In the last 300 or 400 years, there are a number of religions in this country, and such as the Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, Jewish, etc. And they all live together peacefully. But recently, in recent years, because of the emerging of the nationalism, and also because of the factors of politics and economy, so they're gradually seeking for the independence, and after that, they have lots of conflicts and have civil wars. They kill among each other. So thousands of people lost their life because of this.
宗教不一定是冲突的原因，政治可能假借了宗教之名制造纠纷，但受害的是无辜的百姓。所以现在是我们必须借着宗教交流，彼此认识，重新建立友谊，互相信赖，才能不被政治所利用。
Religious may not be the reason of this conflict, and politics always possibly try to borrow the name of the religion and try to create the dispute and war and violence. So the victims are really very suffering from this, and therefore now we must take the name of religions to understand among each other, to re-establish the friendship and the mutual trust. Therefore, we can resolve the conflict.
在波士尼亚的时候，我见到了美国大使、联合国驻波士尼亚的领袖，跑遍了南部与北部，见了各种宗教的领袖，大家都很意外。我这个和尚来这里做什么？我回答说：我来看看我能做什么。
While I was in Bosnia, I met ambassador from United States, the leader of UN in Bosnia, and also visited a lot of regions in southern part and northern part of the country. I have met a number of religious leaders. Everyone was surprised when they saw me. They say, a monk like me, what do I do here in this country? My answer is, I come here to see what I can do.
他们对于一个佛教徒能从遥远的东方来到这个偏僻又被媒体错误报道的地方，不怕生死送来关怀，令他们感受到宗教的温暖。
They're thinking of seeing a Buddhist person coming from far away from east come to this remote and isolated and also misunderstood by the media's country, and also not afraid of this to deliver the concern. So they are very touched. They are very touched by the warmth of the religion.
有一位记者问我说：“您真的相信世界会和平吗？”我告诉他：“当你的心是和平的，世界就是和平的。”
A journalist from the TV station asked me, "Do you really there will be peace in the world?" I told him that if your heart is peaceful, then the world is peace.
Another 另外一个经验是今年的3月，我们在纽约有一场演讲，在911现场有一个英国教堂外面祈祷。在这个教堂现在是救难人员生活的地方，里面的修女知道我在外面，特别开门让我进去祈祷，我成为了第一个获准进入里面的佛教人士，在911之后。
Another example and also another experience that I have is in this year. That is after the 6 months after the 9/11 event, September 11th event. I went to New York. I delivered a speech over there, and after that, I visited a British National Religious Church in the neighborhood of this Ground Zero site. And this church now is resided by the rescue people. They live in here. And the sister in this church knew that I was outside and opened the door of the church, allowed me to walk in and allow me to pray in there. So I was the first Buddhist person allowed to enter into this church.
而在博物馆的筹备期间，我们受到各宗教的支持。教宗送了宗伯一纸祝福状，达赖喇嘛送了一对他使用的法器，僧皇送了我们一尊金佛，回教联盟送了我们天坊的黑木。可见，宗教交流可能不是透过很多的对谈或者是研讨会。宗教交流最困难的永远是踏出第一步，所以我都是扮演先主动伸出手、微笑拥抱的那个人。
In the preparation of this museum, we were also accepted a lot of support from different religions. Pope John Paul II sent us a blessing paper, and His Holiness Dalai Lama also sent us a Dharma utensil, and King of Thailand also gave us a golden Buddha. So that means that only the religious has no boundaries and can put every one of us together.
博物馆之后，我们想要做的是宗教大学。这所大学是理论与实修并重的大学。
After the religions has been completed last year, next thing we would like to do is to establish a religious university, and this is a university composed of various religions in there.
Sorry, I add up. It should be equally emphasized on the series and practice. That's very important. Sorry about this. 所以我们希望能寻求与世界各宗教大学或知名学府的合作，商讨如何设计课程、如何交换学生等种种计划。
Therefore, that we hope to seek the cooperation from the various religious universities around the world, and also from the well-known academic institutes, and to discuss how to plan a good courses or curriculum for this.
由于时间的关系，那我们有把师父的演讲稿缩短。那希望这个世界宗教博物馆日后能有大家的支持与希望能够跟大家一起合作。
Because of the time issues, we have cut down a lot in this script. That's why I was jumping around also. Sorry about that. And indeed, we hope that through this speech, we would like to get more cooperation from all the religions.
Thank you very much. 谢谢。
Thank you. Thank you, Dharma Master Hong Shi. I believe some of you may already notice there's a special exhibition, the mystical art of Tibetan, going on in the Museum of World Religious. This special exhibition has included statues, tankas, ritual objects, and robes, specially selected by His Holiness Dalai Lama. There are 33 special collections from northern India, Japan Roslin Monastery, and 17 precious collections from the museum. And we also invited the abbot, Chamba Rinpoche, and other 6 benevolence practitioners to create sand mandala for this exhibition. We are pleased to have them to recite the blessing for us. Now, let's welcome Chamba Rinpoche. 现在让我们来欢迎强巴伦坡切为我们做祝福的仪式，请。
连长呢，外面，等你忙回去对吧？就，连长阿珍，这帮都3年，扎上，这帮都3年扎上，我，这帮你都给测不起的，还天让了这些的了这个。
各位在场的朋友，大家晚安。我们是来自于南印度子蹦市罗斯林扎仓，里面的僧众大约有2000，